the international SEO is both ends. It's international audience, international target group, what you optimize for, but also international clients you cater for. And it's two very different skill sets that kind of come together when you have both experiences.
Hello, Natalia. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, I'm okay. We were just discussing before pressing record now that we know each other in Catalan, but now we're speaking in English, so it's going to be a bit awkward, but it's going to be nice. I think it's going to be like a different, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and actually, we just said as well that everyone has got different personality when they speak a different language. And I think my English personality is a bit nicer than my Spanish. I think Spanish I swear a lot. So
I want
maybe
nice. I want
it will be a
nicer.
good taste on
Yes.
me. It will be a good look.
That's cool. So thank you very much for joining. I had this invitation, there pending, but then we had an episode with David like some time ago, and then he mentioned, was like, yes. So here we have the excuse. So for those of us who don't know you, so could you please introduce yourself a little bit and just let us know what is Natalia in the international SEO beyond Google field, blah, blah, blah.
Blah blah blah. Let's start with the blah blah blah. So yeah, my name is Natalia Witczyk. For those who want to learn the proper pronunciation of my surname, which I don't use very often, is actually Witczyk. So it's kind of tells away that I'm originally not from Spain. I'm from Poland, where I grew up my whole life. And then I joined SEO in the UK, where I was typically the only foreigner or the only Polish person in the office, working in some SEO companies, first in-house, then agency. And kind of always this thing happened when people ask me, so do you do international SEO? Just because I was international, I had the accent. You never get rid of the accent, right? And also my hobby was languages. People knew I was into learning Italian, Spanish. Before I moved to Spain, I already had some little experience learning that language. And it kind of stuck with me that people see the international in me before I specialize in international. So I thought, if I'm already selling it, if I'm already conveying that message, why not go with it? And it was probably the best thing ever.
That's an interesting story, that sometimes we've got these like preconception of like people just before even they know, so they just like set up your fate to be like a very well-known, I would say, SEO international SEO consultant. So why did you move to the UK? Because of the language, or were you studying there, or?
So I dropped out of the university in Poland. I actually don't have a degree. And I decided I want to go in the world. But at the time, the world was very small for me. I didn't see myself outside of Europe. Already UK felt like really far away. And that was the time when kind of UK was a safe destination for Polish people who wanted to emigrate, maybe make some money. So that was the idea. To be fair, my heart was always with Mediterranean countries. At the time, I spoke better Italian than Spanish. So I was always thinking, oh, maybe one day I'll move to Italy. It would be great. And just because of crisis and little opportunities and me having zero experience, zero let's say craft in my hands to go and actually apply for professional jobs, I just went for what seemed to be the idea that would pay for my life and get me out of Poland. That was the plan.
Well, that's interesting. And why? I reckon that you started like as a content SEO, or did you?
I started as full-on marketing 360 on a minimum wage. So the type that's paid nothing and has to do everything. They paid with kind.
Yeah, I know that. Okay, and then you started off in the UK, and then you decided to move to Barcelona, I presume, to Spain.
So yeah, as soon as the kind of the job at the time, getting a job in the SEO industry was fairly easy if you were hardworking and keen. And I always was too keen. I was always 100% motivated and wanted to do things better and ask a lot of questions. So I got quickly promoted in the UK. But that's around the same time when the Brexit talk started. And as
Oh,
soon as I got an opportunity to move to Barcelona, which was a pure coincidence, I didn't pick the place picked me. I just found a UK agency that was expanding to Spain just to have EU trading address and bank accounts and legal status. And that's when I just took the opportunity and decided to go with it. And it so happens that that agency was an international marketing agency where Yandex partner at the time. And my keen interest in international SEO from before, no experience yet, just keen interest, was enough for them to bet on me and basically relocate me to Barcelona with them. So I was employee number one who relocated to Barcelona, one of many, because that agency then expanded to Barcelona full time.
oh, wow! And what's the difference between UK life and Barcelona life?
The first thing is the rules and the dress code. I was doing my best in the UK to really fit in. I really wanted to make my career work, so I was willing to do what it takes. So I would wear the dress code, which is ridiculous because you are paid minimum wage and you have to wear a white shirt, like if you actually, if it meant anything. So Primark was my best friend at the time. We actually called it Primark with my best friends because that was the thing. Like you try to look at money, but it was definitely Primark. And those rules of the punctuality and the strict rules and certain kind of office rules, making tea for everyone. There was like people were rotating and with like a huge tray. You had to go once a week and make tea for everyone in the office. And I was like, I like to make my own tea. Don't make my tea. I don't want to make your tea. And actually, I was told, my boss, he was a British guy, that took me on a side. I was like, you actually have to make the tea. Like that's the thing in the office. So those social rules and kind of those checkbox behaviors,
Yeah.
I really did my best to fit in with. I struggled with, and only when I moved to Spain, I understood how much of a weight that was because I didn't really. I was just imitating their behaviors without understanding why. So I think that was super interesting to try to fit in, and only after I could actually let go of all that, I understood how much of a burden I was.
Oh wow. Yeah, and especially the tea that that each person is just like, they want like a bit of milk, that
Yeah,
way,
well,
the
milk
other
to
way, and
sugar,
it's like,
to
oh
sugar,
my
no milk.
god, oh my
To
god,
milk,
yeah,
no sugar. You had to
oh my god.
and the tray, and I'm very clumsy in life and in the kitchen. So just the nightmare of carrying a tray full of hot beverages.
Oh god.
I'll
And then
never
so you
forget
moved,
that.
yeah, and then so you moved to Barcelona. So you kept on working in this in-house company,
That was
but
an
then
agency.
you
Yeah,
well, it was
that
an
was me.
agency, but then you quickly like moved to freelance, or what was the shift there?
So I definitely at the time could be described as a job hopper. And I was. Every time I felt like I'm not fitting in, my motivation is cracking down. I was quick to move on. And just because I had that drive and that motivation in me, I think it was fine. People didn't mind because they saw something in me that maybe compensated the fact I wasn't staying in companies for such a long time. So I would quit often before I've had the next opportunity lined up. And in the beginning, it happened so that I quit because I was on the verge of a burnout. And highly motivated people have that a lot, right? You get so motivated, it's so keen, you very quickly lose all that
Yeah.
energy and go on. That used to be me 100%. So I sometimes was freelancing just to kind of make ends meet and find a way between the jobs. I'm very quick to catch any opportunity. I don't recommend it as a career path for everyone, but if you deal with change as well as I do, it can be great because you're then always motivated on your own terms. But I know most traditional employees, they don't usually appreciate that kind of rhythm of change.
Yeah, I do feel you, because sometimes, I've been with my own company for 15 years, so sometimes it's very difficult to keep yourself motivated throughout like a long time, but like a decade, or more than a decade. So I do feel, yeah. So I do feel you. I reckon that in my case, it's just because I do so many different things that that when something goes up in motivation, some other thing goes down. Anyway, so tell me, what's all this experience, all this background has like shaped your international SEO perspective? Because obviously you're coming from Poland, you lived in the UK, then Barcelona, and now China. So what's your, you've got like a proper, really international SEO perspective in that sense. So how is all this articulated?
So I think that all this experience just pushes me to be more international every time. China is very new. I've only moved here 2 weeks ago, so very fresh experience. That's a fruit of more than a year of preparation and negotiations with the company that I'm working for now, and getting that set up. First of all, I think the international SEO is both ends. It's international audience, international target group, what you optimize for, but also international clients you cater for. And it's two very different skill sets that kind of come together when you have both experiences. But it's getting the buy-in from the clients. It's explaining your work and what you do and how you do it to people with different assumptions and cultural backgrounds who might spend the same amount of money for a project very different way and treat it very differently, right? So first of all, I think the UK taught me to be more precise, polite. It got my English to level I probably have now, or probably even higher at the time, because now I speak more of international English than British English. That I really spoke British English at the time. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, all those rules, all those behaviors I didn't get. But fitting in is a skill, and I was learning how to fit in and how to adapt to a place I didn't fully understand, and that's fine. Today, I can proudly say, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this, but I did see it from the inside, right? I did do it. So I was really struggling with punctuality, but I did learn it at some point, right? I was struggling with the office rules. I learned small talk. And then Spain, which is also a different way of associating yourself. It's more about teamwork and winning together and that collective part, which I really love. It took me a long time to understand, because in Poland, it's not like that. We're more set on your own goal and be more direct. And Spain is more about buen rollo and making things work together and working things out, instead of just maybe quitting or just confronting someone about something that's wrong, right? So also learning that. And now China is completely a different story. I don't know if that answers or just tells.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, and I reckon that the fact that you are from Poland is making you, it's easier for you to adapt to all those changes, because I would doubt that like a regular Spaniard would have been able to adapt like so easily, apparently easily and quickly, to like a very different like cultural backgrounds, because obviously and now that you are experiencing China, cultural differences, which I am very fond of, like, the intercultural communication, blah, 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 blah. I just like super key, especially from the perspective of what you were saying before, like how you communicate, how you get through to your end clients in like different parts of the world. So that's so very amazing. And then talking about SEO itself, like international SEO, because this episode is going to be beyond Google. Okay, obviously you have had some experiences, like working with other browsers and other algorithms. So what is happening here? Is it like really different, like working towards first users, then algorithms, or what's happening here? Are there any points in common, especially now with LLMs and AIs everywhere? So what's your take on this?
Looking at other search engines, there's so many interesting anecdotes how kind of make you expand your understanding, expand your view of how search engines work. And I think I say that a lot recently because it comes back as a mantra all the time. I think we forgot that Google and search engine aren't synonymous. They're not the same thing. Google is a product of a very specific mindset from a very specific culture. It's very American in many ways. Other search engines don't have the level of transparency, communication, dialogue at all. So we are lucky, those who work with Google and for Google and in Google, to be part of a wider conversation. Baidu does not Baidu, which is the biggest traditional search engine in China, hasn't updated their documentation since sometimes 2012, depending on the topic.
Oh,
so it's
wow.
like they don't announce many updates, and if they do, it's very, very vague. There's no Baidu speakers that just go around and explain.
Yeah, there's no John Mueller.
no Chinese John Mueller. No Gary Elias.
Wow.
None of that. And also, Baidu, for many people who don't actually never tried doing SEO, just people assume it's ads. That's the only way you show up, for sure. Ads. Other things seem a bit too difficult to just go and own, because the SERP is very different, and it's full of Baidu own products. Baidu Wikipedia, Baidu Local, Baidu whatnot, Baidu Music Player. Anything you search for will have Baidu's,
like a Baidu product. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're not really competing the same way as we are in Google, because Google has been penalized by United States now, previously by European Union, by some monopoly, right, rulings. So it's really a wild west out there. And I think, yeah, obviously there is some healthy criticism towards Google, and I am on that wagon of saying, yeah, like, Google shouldn't get away with all they do, but we really have it good compared to some other markets and countries.
That's interesting. That's interesting. What about so whenever you approach like international SEO, now that you are in China, for example, do you know Chinese, or are you in charge of like where you are working at the moment? Are you in charge of like working like for other search engines apart from Baidu, or what's your role there? I mean, do you know Chinese? Have you been? I'm sure that you've been studying some Chinese, but by what you were saying about that you're a language freak. So
there's a very important distinction that you've just made. Thank you for that. I am studying Chinese. Doesn't mean I know it.
of course, yeah.
Very far away. But something that strikes me a lot, Chinese way of thinking. Even people who speak very fluent Chinese don't always have the Chinese way of thinking. I even met people already after arriving here who speak fluent Chinese because they have parents of Chinese descent. For example, this guy I just met last week grew up in the US his whole life, parents both Chinese, heard Chinese at home, knows a lot of vocabulary. He says he can pass as Chinese for 5-10 minutes of a conversation, but then he doesn't have the Chinese way of thinking. And I find it fascinating because the whole phrasing of concepts is so different that I hope one day maybe to get close to getting that. Yeah. And now coming back to your original question, I am here in China working for this amazing agency called Jademon Digital, who are this East-West agency. They connect Asia with the West. In the past, they used to promote foreign brands in China. We have plenty of fantastic Chinese native speaking specialists. Now it's more about Chinese brands going international. So my main role will be basically working on some client accounts that want to expand to Google, and they just don't have the Google awareness because they don't even use Google, not to mention knowing SEO for Google. So it's making those websites really international in multiple markets in the West. And at the same time, that will not be my core task, but I will be observing and hopefully learning about marketing for China, Western brands or brands in China. But that's more of an observer hat than the specialist hat.
Wow, that's so amazing. Yeah, I'm jealous. Yeah, that would be like to be there, just like learning a lot. So it sounds like so interesting. And what do you think is the most difficult? I mean, even if you've been there for just 2 weeks, but so far, from your experience, what's the most difficult for Chinese brands to understand about Google mindset or like foreign SEO mindset? What do you think is like
black hat SEO? They all think it's black hat. They don't understand that there is a white hat and black hat. They think SEO equals black hat SEO. They all want to buy links. They all ask you how many articles a month we're gonna publish. That's all they think SEO is. They don't get that evolution that Google has had. So they come to you with huge misconception of what SEO really is in today's
nowadays. Yeah.
And even if you hire you as a specialist, they still doubt you just because they're like, but wait, where are the links?
Wow. But is it because, on the other hand, SEO for Baidu relies a lot on links and on like backlinking and all these off-page SEO techniques, whatever?
The short answer is yes. Baidu is very much easy to manipulate. There are voices that it's not as easy as it used to be and it's changing, but because there's no comms officially, there's no updated information from the search team, because frankly, it doesn't seem to exist in the same capacity as we know it from Google. There just doesn't seem to be conversation around the quality of results. But I also have another theory. I don't know how much it's that Baidu is not changing and Google has changed, or how much the conversation from Google has made us all buy into the new way of doing SEO. So we as SEOs and freelancers and webmasters moved that conversation and we educated the clients, and then the clients changed. So Google is just evaluating a very different system from what Baidu does. Because imagine if no one in Baidu in China never changed approach towards links, and they are buying links as they always were. How would Baidu go about manual penalties for everyone? Like, it's impossible. You have to maintain a system of results. So you're really working with what you have, right? So my theory is there's two sides of the same coin. There's part of actually websites not changing the outcomes, and Baidu not having different results to work with.
Interesting. And what's about PPC there? Is it working? Is it more or less like here? What's the take there?
It's very prominent, PPC, and it's the strategy that you have to implement if you just want to show up in search. You cannot just rely on organic purely and expect amazing results, especially if you are just starting. So PPC is way more important. And luckily, Jademon, they do SEO. They also do PPC on a big scale. So typically, it's a joint effort on actually making PPC the main product, and then SEO is kind of accompanying that, but it's not claiming better results or cheaper return, because it's just so much more difficult because the limited space organic results get in Baidu. There's also the different landscape because what China has done, well, what happened to China over the last more than a decade, it's also taking away from traditional search and moving to social apps that are way more than social apps. So the traditional case of looking into Chinese marketing is WeChat, which in Chinese is actually called Weixin, but it's the same thing. And it's this app that is comparable to WhatsApp, but it's also
It's more, much more than that. Yeah, it's everything.
marketing machine integrated with maps, with food delivery. When you want to order your coffee or get really anything on e-commerce shop, you just go through your WeChat, and then there is a mini app within that ecosystem that is specific to a brand. And that marketing channel has been growing and kept stable and took away from traditional search.
And what about like SEO tools? Do they exist there? Like the same, like Ahrefs or SEMrush, whatever. Do they exist there, or do they have their own, or do they coexist? So what's the tools thing? Because I reckon that whenever you have to do, I mean, you can make use of them from there, because it is this idea of like China blocking some IPs, whatever, for external things. Do you work around VPNs, or what do you do?
Many interesting questions in one. I'll try to answer all
Yeah,
of them.
yeah. Sorry, it's just like
Good. All good questions. All really China specific. First thing, there is what is called Great Chinese Internet Wall. There is quite a bit of censorship, but it's not a random censorship. It's actually websites that don't comply with Chinese law, and surprisingly to many, Europe has got similar law, just not as strict, because the law is not as strict. But also in Europe, if you don't comply with certain laws, some products or websites will not be available to you. Take pirated content, like they're getting blocked and they are not available anymore. So it's think about it like that, but just take into account that they consider Facebook, Google, Instagram responsible for the published content on their platforms, and they've just decided they don't want to comply with this level of scrutiny over what users provide. So it's not that China has blocked everything outside of China. That's not the case. China has blocked what doesn't comply with publishing rules they've established. Okay, so that's a simplification a bit of that system, because there's a lot of nuance there. But if you mention certain things, or you don't promise to control what you mention, you cannot be displayed in China. Most of the SEO tools are not blocked, and I'll actually surprise you. SEMrush tracks Baidu positions, and you can access SEMrush from China, no problem, because they don't publish anything that would really speak about delicate topics that don't comply with Chinese law. So they're fine. There are plenty of local tools which are way cheaper, because if you just work on Baidu system, it's not as expensive to run, and prices here are way lower, so they're not compared with Western markets. And there's a couple of really good tools that do extends, because SEMrush does basic tracking, like basic tracking for Baidu positions, not much more, sorry. But there are some other tools that we know. Maybe some of the old school SEO people remember and still use Advanced Web Rankings, which is a tool that's been around for a really long time. And I remember in my first SEO agency, I did work on that tool. It tracks Baidu as well and other Chinese search engines. And same goes with Dragon Metrics, which originally was founded as a tool for China, but now has evolved and expanded to be, generally speaking, SEO tool, not just limited to China. So yeah, there are tools that work in the West. We can contract from the West that work for China. There are local tools as well. There also is webmaster tools for Baidu. So really, if you get into optimizing for China, you have plenty of choices on how to go about it, how to get the data.
Interesting. And because I reckon that you also, or I heard or listened to a previous podcast, but you also have like some other experiences on other search engines. What about is it Naver, the Korean one that you know a little bit as well, or Yandex? What can you tell us about, like, broad, like not so much detailed? What are the differences, more or less, with Google that we know for sure?
So I start with Naver because it will be quicker. I don't have extensive experience. However, I was exposed to it at some point. And it's interestingly not a search engine that is a traditional search engine. It doesn't crawl for discovery. You have to submit your website. And that was always the biggest. So back in the day when I did work with it, we had Korean native speakers and Korean mobile phones, and we were just submitting the site and monitoring the submitted data, not much more. Obviously, then you can go into optimizing as well. And of course, you write your metadata and you make sure you write about things that people wanna read and find. But the baseline was, don't expect just to show up out of nowhere. You have to make that initial effort to be there.
So this is like Google from like ages ago, that you had to submit your site as well to be indexed. And
they've never had to change it, but to be fair, Naver has been really overpowered by Android and integrated Google search with an Android. And of course, when we think about Korea, we think about Samsung, and that definitely the role of a smartphone of that brand has made it, the deals with Google that made it a default search engine, definitely pushed Naver's market share to lower and lower. It still exists. It still is out there. It's just not as prominent as it used to be.
And what about Yandex? Yeah,
that's a polemic one, because back in the day when I was working with Yandex, that was that partner agency. I can actually name them, WebCertain. They were Yandex partner agency. They specialized in teaching people how to use Yandex ads and also Yandex tools in general. And it was fascinating because Yandex had the fantastic equivalent of Google Analytics, which was Yandex Metrica. And it really worked very well because it had not only the analytics part, it also could do a bit of UX heat maps situation. So it was a very basic setup at the time, but for a free tool that just did that integrated within your analytics, that was amazing. And also they were the analytics tool that worked for China. So you could report on Chinese traffic by Yandex Metrica, which you couldn't by Google because Google is blocked and Google scripts are blocked. So that was fascinating, right? And I've even attended an event with Yandex people. I met some people from Yandex offices because it was the search engine at the time that was supposed to challenge Google. And they were expanding to many markets. They expanded to Turkey. They expanded to Ukraine. They expanded to Kazakhstan. And there was a moment in time, in history, in politics, when we thought Russia is coming to Europe closer and closer. And we just, world is changing and we're all closer and we're just going to collaborate and, integrate. Now today we know it's not the case, and Yandex is in financial trouble, although not bankrupt, because they still operate highly in Russia and in China, out of all places. However, clearly, the expansion to Ukraine and expansion to Turkey has not really worked out for reasons we will not discuss in this podcast.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, but I thought they were still big in Turkey though.
I think it never picked up as much as the hopes were, but they're very interesting because Turkish as a language, maybe you'll know that, is a lot about appending words together. So you can add a notation inside the word and you can change, make it a question. Words are very long and very complex. And that's the same with Slavic languages, especially Russian, which is one of the most complex as it comes to word making and precision you add to the word. And their kind of starting point was they were designed around the fact they know how to break those words down and understand the context, inclination and stuff like that, which many other languages don't have, and Google doesn't really get that well compared to Yandex, to be honest. So their idea of expansion to Turkey was exactly that, having that part of algorithm that understands language better. And there's one anecdote I have to share. Very old, this anecdote, but it never ages. It must be already about 10 or 11 years ago, if I recall correctly. Yandex had a crazy idea to turn off the module that calculates links within the algorithm. So they turned off kind of backlink part from their results, and they rolled that back after very few months because it was a disaster.
Oh wow.
They've actually done it, and it wasn't a test. It was a full on, I think, 6 or whatever month rollout when they've checked how a search engine without links works, and it didn't. It was horrendous. So they rolled back, and they officially said that that's not going to work. And I think this is an important also context for anyone who thinks that Google doesn't use links anymore. See what happened to Yandex back in the day in shambles.
I'm sure they learned the lesson.
Exactly.
So
So I
even
don't
though
think they will ever do that. Even if they claim they use links less and less, there is a base of the algorithm that you just don't turn off, because otherwise you end up with chaos.
that's a good thing. Yeah, you Google people listening to us, so what about, like, from your like your global perspective? Imagine the case that a company has to really focus on international, and what would be your suggestion, your tips to do international SEO without, like, specifying the market or anything? Let me rephrase it. What would be your tip that could work for any single search engine? That is
Good question. And I liked your specification about not specifying the market, because that tip is universal, but it's specifically related to specifying the market. So whatever your company, whatever your business model, and whatever your niche, specify a benchmark for a market or a couple of markets. When I say couple of markets, maybe 5, maybe 7, but don't go crazy, because the clients that come to me for a consult and they say everywhere, they're the worst kind of client, because you need to have a data point from somewhere. You need to measure position somewhere. You have to track Google in a specific location. Google does not work agnostically from a place. Even if you fake the place, there is a place in mind in a system. So first of all, clearly target few markets. And to be honest, 3 to 5 is the optimum number. Even if you are a SaaS that is available anywhere and there is a payment model that works for everyone, you still need to be specific. So this way, you have a starting point, you know what data to track, you know what keywords you use. Even if then it's international English, you still want to go for US as a spelling version, or Spanish from Spain as your spelling in Spanish, in the Spanish version of a website, and not Mexico, for example. And it makes every next decision easier. So you will have accidental success somewhere else, but you will know what is the success in the market you are actually targeting. And I think it's crucial. And when you decide that, then also don't just rely on data and your tracking of positions, which obviously is great, and do it. And look at your clicks and impressions in Search Console, or Baidu Webmasters, or Yandex Webmasters, any tool, or Bing. But also go into the SERP and actually experience that search through a VPN and see how it looks like, because there's something else in the data, and there's an exact search experience that your users are having. So yeah, focus on specific scenarios, users, locations, and only this way you actually get somewhere. Otherwise, it will be just a lot of random data points that you'll never figure out, because you're not measuring anything by measuring everything.
Amazing. And then obviously, if we're talking about international SEO, we have to talk about the favorite buzzword, hreflang.
The H word, I love it.
Oh my God. It's like, okay, what else? Is it still crazy, and is it still important to have a look at hreflang nowadays? I know that Google said quite recently that they are not really looking into anymore. Okay, trust Google or not? And then, is it really necessary to have a look at it when most of CMSs put them, or widgets or plugins put them automatically on the content. I mean, what's happening with this lovely HTML tag?
So Google keeps saying one thing, and I love that from them, because they're very consistently saying that for years. They say, we know it's hard, we know it's broken, we know it doesn't work perfectly, but we've not come up with anything better. So we're going to roll with it. And they often say on like events and conferences, or even their own podcast, like, have suggestions how to do it better? Come to us and give us an idea, because it's a very hard thing to do, to figure out language, location, user preference. I always want to kind of underline one thing. hreflang is not a checklist item for SEO. It's not something you just have to have and you just do it because it's there. There are some checklist items, like probably unique titles. We all want a unique title for pages that are showing in search. That's a must-have. hreflang is not one of those. hreflang is there to fix a very specific problem with geotargeting. Now, there will be cases of websites that have zero problems like that. So adding hreflang will not make any difference. If it's automated by CMS or development work needed by a programmer, doesn't matter, because it will just not fix anything, because nothing's broken. And now, this is a very typical case for, let's say, a bit of a pan-European or pan-global websites that have a version in English and French and Spanish, and they don't localize to markets. They just have language versions. And Google really does a great job with that. Like, Google does not confuse French with Spanish. Google does not confuse English with German. Like, clearly, that's not a problem. It might confuse it on some specific query levels where query is language agnostic. So if you have just your brand name and no other context, so we don't really know what user is searching for, probably language can be a bit blurry as well. But that's a very rare case and usually not a problem for a website. Now, the problem starts if you're really specific to specific markets. So maybe you have 5 language versions for Spanish, and each of them is targeting different specific country. Maybe you have Switzerland, which is trilingual officially. Actually, officially quadrilingual, but there are 3 languages people use on to be specific. Maybe you have Catalan version, and you want to make sure it's being recognized properly by Google. And Google with Spanish and Catalan is not as great as other languages because the differences in writing are not as evident on the algorithmical level. So first question to ask is, do you need to fix a geotargeting issue or not? If not, don't bother with hreflang. And if you do, it might not work as expected. It's only a directive. It's not I forgot the word. It's not, Google is not following it as an own index tag. Google is looking into it as a hint. Sorry, not a directive hint. That's the point. So you can hint to Google what you want it to do, but you cannot direct it to do exactly what you want about geotargeting. And other signals seem to have become more prominent than hreflang with time. So it's not that hreflang lost its value. It's just there's other better signals that now make more sense.
Amazing. Thank you for this. Making clear about this issue, which I hate, and then obviously we must talk about international SEO and LLMS, the AI, whatever. What? So what? What do you think about? What's the obviously from the perspective of like content creation, like first point, but then also translation, localization, from the perspective of like like LLMS and AI, whatever. What do you think the solution is, or what do you think is going to happen, or what is happening? What's your take on this? I will let you know my take on that as well later on, but I want to hear yours, which you are the expert here.
Well, expert or not, no one is an expert in what's going to happen with LLMs.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
None of us has seen it coming the way it is. I don't think 2, 3, 4 years ago you ask anyone, is this going to happen? And we would just know, right? And
No
I think
one would
there's
have,
so
no one would have really thought it was going to be like this. Yeah, you're right.
I'm quite shocked how quickly it's getting adapted, but also how quickly people are making bold claims. And I'm standing back and thinking, whoa, whoa, whoa. One law, one issue, one price change, one server, whatever, and it's all gonna turn the way we didn't expect it. So there's some interesting things I've recently read and heard and thought about. And I think we really need to understand that we're comparing Google, which is a very much efficient and sustainable pricing model, because Google is making a lot of revenue every single year, consistently up and up. We're comparing it with OpenAI products that bring loss, and not only on overall result, but actually on paid subscriptions as well. So I really can't wait for the pricing model and business model of OpenAI to become sustainable, and then we can compare the two, and we can understand which one is there to stay and which one is gonna really be exclusive to people who can afford it, or really be just a corporate solution because average Joe like me and you will not want to spend that much money for something that is not that amazing yet, right? There are going to be legal implications in the European Union that's going to change the way those tools operate. Who knows? Because really looking at censorship in China, now I have to clearly say I'm not for it. I'm not just for censorship full stop. But coming here and observing how people talk about it and how people understand it, I'm not as against it as I thought I was in the past. I start to understand the why, because I do feel that our internet now, it's a Wild West, and someone trying to control it is not just the villain for the sake of it. There is thinking into law on the Chinese internet is not broken as often as it is in Europe. There's not so many things to moderate because those platforms take it seriously to filter it out before it happens, right? So no one is watching beheadings by accident, things like that. So there's a lot of questions there. What the European Union is going to do? And I don't think they will adapt the Chinese model, but they will definitely adapt some new model of how they treat published content online. So from a very long background of what is my prediction, I can't wait for things to clarify, because we are in a moment that is not to stay. It's almost like with Uber before it started to take away the taxes and became more expensive than taxis in the US. But in the beginning, it was way cheaper, right, to dominate that market. Yeah. So I think that's OpenAI now. And I'm skeptical to think it's just going to take all the searches and kill Google and stuff like that, because our tech bubble is not the reality of most of people who interact with the internet. And there will always, the dominance of Google is just not so easy to swipe away. That's what I think.
I think it is ingrained in our brains so much, and it's going to take ages to maybe not ages, but some generations maybe to, if it ever happens, to get rid of like Google from our minds, no? So it is actually, it has become a synonym for search. So that's it, no? So yeah, and what about what do you think, talking about again about AI generated content and everything, what do you think about all these massive international generated content and localization? Do you think it's going to, I mean, EEAT is going to have something to say about this? Because I said, like previously in some other podcasts, that I would like to create a schema markup for professional translators or for professional companies providing professional like content strategies, whatever, in order to signal Google, hey, this has been Google or whoever, this has been properly like professionally produced, whatever, no? So it has not just been AI. When I say just, it's just because nowadays, like not even drafting with AI is a bit crazy, especially if you want to do it at scale. What do you think about this?
I think the value of quality is going to be more premium every time. And I think premium brands, premium experiences, premium websites that sell human touch, human attention, human customer service will need human translation to be giving that last drop, that last touch of brand, of human language. And I've seen AI translations work in Google for now, but also what we see now, it's still early days, and I think users are going to vote with their clicks. And I think when users vote with the clicks, the machine learning systems will also help us filter through what's just noise and blah, 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 and what's actually human value. So I want to think, maybe I'm an optimist here. I want to think that users are going to vote with their clicks long term, and it's going to filter out. And I think cheap mass service is going to be very different as it comes to web experience to the one that's actually tailored and humanized. It's already happening. Where do you get a personal checkout with a person actually charging you?
Yeah.
A Matier. And where do you have an automated Lidl, right? Or Mercadona, right? So that's obviously a very Spanish comparison, but hopefully international audience also understands this reference. So premium is always going to be human, and that's what I think is going to happen.
I love to end like in this positive note, although I do think that the mass market, is just like going for the good enough. It's just going to be like the, you see, again, talking about your comparison, Mercadona is like making loads of money, and in comparison to these boutique lovely street markets or whatever shops. Anyway, I do expect that we are right on this.
I have to say, it's my wishful thinking. Sometimes I wish the world was different. I'm the weird type that doesn't buy on Amazon. I never do, and not Amazon competitors either. So I try to live what I preach, but I also know it's not the majority of the people. So
that's good. We are the few ones. Anyway, Natalia, I don't know if we've covered what we were supposed to be speaking about, but I loved our chat. I think I've learned a lot, and it's been so nice to have you here. I do say now that this is not going to be the only first time that you're going to be invited here. So I would love to be speaking again soon, so you can tell us more about your experience in China. And to finish off with the typical questions that I always ask at the end of each episode, and especially to you that you've lived everywhere, could you tell us an anecdote, which can be professional or personal, about a language or a cultural issue that you have encountered in your life?
Yeah, I think I've already given a few of anecdotes with like more
Of course,
cultural.
yeah, I know.
It's the language one, because I think this is interesting. So in China, if you ask a question that is impossible for someone to answer, they'll rarely say, I don't know. The cultural thing is to give you some answer, but sometimes it's as ridiculous as it gets. So you don't show that you don't know, and you don't have to say, I don't know. And it's very much alive. So I'm really learning to read very delicate cues of people are not willing to give me an answer, but they still say something. But yeah, when I went to China, the anecdote, when I went to China for the first time as a backpacker 12 years ago, I went to the beautiful city of Xi'an to see the terracotta warriors. That was my goal. I'm yet to see them, maybe this time around, because the time I went, I was a very poor backpacker and I decided to take public transport. And when I asked the person for the directions, they gave me the literal opposite way than I was supposed to. I took a city bus and I ended up in the fields of rice with nothing there. And I was the only day I had there to actually see the warriors. So I didn't get there just because I ended up in the middle of nowhere. So now I know not to ask random people random questions and just take their answer for it, because they're not willing to say I don't know. And if they do, it means they are very westernized. They've learned their English very well, and they know the concept of saying that, because just in Chinese, even if you translate it for a translator, they still, they cannot just make it sound out of their own will. That's a cultural difference that I'll remember forever.
That's interesting. Hopefully you get to see the terracotta thing, like warriors, which they're meant to be amazing, and you tell us what they are like. And the very, very, very last question for this episode: who would you think I could invite to talk some international business, even international SEO, although we have covered quite a lot? Who can you tell us, or can you tell me to invite to talk some international businessy thing?
So there's this amazing guy called Robert Reed Kay that I would like to recommend to you, that I recently got in touch with, who specializes in sourcing from China, and not just China, also Asia. And actually not just sourcing, but product development and design, and finding the best factory that's going to make exactly that element that is perfect for this purpose. And this is a guy who grew up in Hong Kong, British, who grew up in Hong Kong. So has got this amazing way of connecting China with UK, and way of thinking, way of understanding business. And I think he's a fantastic addition to Chinese topics, more from business perspective than SEO perspective.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. We had some episodes on product sourcing on season 2, I think, and so it's going to be like a very nice follow up on that as well. So it's going to be nice. Very good. So thank you very much for the recommendation. I would definitely contact him. And again, Natalia, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. I will be having a beer whenever I see you again in Barcelona, hopefully soon. And thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Gracias. 谢谢.
Bye bye. Cheers.